Since the 1500s, powerful European nations had been establishing colonies in North America. What began as small trading posts soon became large cities, and the colonists were always expanding. By the 1750s, British and French settlers had reached the strategic Ohio River Valley, controlled by the Iroquois natives and Chief Tanacharison.
The French claim all the land on one side of the river. The English claim everything on the other. If that be the case, I ask, where does the Indian land lie? Tanacharison, 1752.
The Iroquois allowed the British to build a trading post on their land, thinking it will allow them to live in peace, but it only brings war to the valley. In April 1754, the French arrive and force the British out, tearing down the trade post and building Fort Duquesne. Humiliated and afraid of what the French will do to him, Tanacharison encourages the British to take back the fort. That May, without the approval of Parliament, a group of American militia under George Washington attacked the French. In the following Battle of Fort Necessity, the British would again be defeated. Impressed, many native tribes, such as the Huron, signed agreements with France. The lines had been drawn, and war was coming. In 1755, Major General Edward Braddock arrives from Britain with 2 full regiments, prepared to take Fort Duquesne. For months, his men trained. Braddock believes that the secret to their success was discipline.
Savages may indeed be a formidable enemy to your raw American militia, but upon the King's regular and disciplined troops, it is impossible they should make an impression.
However, European tactics are not suited for the North American wilderness. Natives and French militia, using guerrilla warfare, are able to rout the British, killing over 500 soldiers, including Braddock himself. In England, the government realizes the war will not be over quickly. Tensions rise, and in 1756, the war that began in North America spreads to the Caribbean, Asia, Africa, and Europe. The winner will decide the fate of the world. That year, General Montcalm becomes commander of the French army. He thinks that with a new strategy, they could quickly defeat the British.
It is no longer the time when a few scalps or the burning of a few homes is of any advantage, or even an object.
In 1757, he takes nearly 8,000 soldiers into America to attack the British at Fort William Henry. As the French set up positions around the fort, British Colonel Munro writes to his commander, General Webb.
I have no doubt that you'll send reinforcements as soon as possible. Without additional men, we can only hold out for a few days.
On August 5th, the French begin the siege of the fort. Meanwhile, Munro waits desperately for a reply. 3 days later, the courier is on his way back to the fort, but is intercepted by a native warrior. The French call a truce and deliver General Webb's shocking reply.
I am unable to provide reinforcements to your position at this time. I advise you to negotiate the best terms of surrender possible.
Broken-hearted, Munro agrees to surrender the fort if his men are allowed to leave unharmed. On August 9th, the French take control of Fort William Henry and the British begin their march toward New York. However, the French native allies are upset that they are being denied the spoils of war. They attack the defenseless British column and kill as many as 200 men, women, and children. Fear spreads across British North America, and another defeat at Fort Carillon brings morale to an all-time low. The British need a change, soon. Change for the British finally comes from William Pitt, Secretary of State. His devotion to the war effort convinces Parliament to commit all their resources to the fight, and 20,000 men are sent to take New France. With victories at Fort Duquesne and Louisbourg, the British finally have the French on the run. French Captain Bougainville asks for reinforcements from home, but with France suffering defeats around the world, the reply is anything but encouraging.
I apologize, sir, but one does not simply save the stables when the house is on fire.
By the summer of 1759, the British have arrived at Quebec and have set up camp across from the city. As they prepare to lay siege, all Montcalm can do is wait.
I trust in God, come what may as will be done. I wait for news from France with impatience and dread.
In July, the British begin to bombard Quebec. The lower city is nearly destroyed, and new British commander James Wolfe prepares to take Quebec, no matter what the cost.
Believe me, my friends, if your conquest could be bought with the blood of your general, he would most cheerfully resign a life which he has long devoted to his country.
But by September, the British have yet to make a move on Quebec. Wolfe is very sick, but knows he must take the city before winter sets in. He takes a gamble and attacks the French right outside Quebec. On the night of September 13th, 1759, the British crossed the St. Lawrence and climbed the cliffs outside the city. By morning, nearly 4,000 men have assembled on an abandoned farmer's field, named the Plains of Abraham. James Wolfe surveys the ground and waits for the French. He knows that this battle will decide the fate of Canada. Montcalm is taken by surprise and scrambles 5,000 men, forming a disorganized line. At 8 o'clock, the battle begins. The French advance within range and fire a ragged volley. The highly disciplined British troops are unfazed. The French resume their advance, becoming more disordered with every step. When they are finally within 40 meters of the British, Wolfe prepares to fire. The volley is devastating, and when the British advance with bayonets, the French line collapses in confusion. The surviving French soldiers retreat back to Quebec, and the British are victorious. The battle lasts only 15 minutes, but over 1,300 men are killed, including both generals. Wolfe lives only long enough to hear of his victory.
Then God be praised, I shall die in peace.
Montcalm will die the next day, happy he will not live to see the British enter the city. On September 18th, the French retreat to Montreal, and the British take control of Quebec. That winter, the French will try to retake the city, but will be forced to retreat due to lack of supplies. By the summer of 1760, the British have arrived in Montreal. On September 7th, Captain Bougainville meets with British General Geoffrey Amherst. Bougainville wants to negotiate a treaty that would allow the French to keep Montreal, but Amherst escorts him out of the office, saying,
I have come for Canada, and I will accept nothing less.
Broken-hearted, Bougainville returns to the French lines and prepares for surrender.
I ordered the men to burn their colors, to save them the embarrassment of handing them over to the enemy.
The next day, the British will take control of Montreal. Fireworks light up the sky of Boston and New York. New France has fallen, and Britain and their colonies are victorious. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris gave Canada to the British. With this land came over 80,000 French-Canadian citizens. Normally, these people would have been exiled or forced to become English, but this time, the British allowed the French to keep their culture, language, and religion. For the first time in history, French and British settlers would live together. After a brief rebellion, many natives were also granted new rights. However, many Americans were upset they had to share the continent after their victory, and this, combined with taxes imposed to pay for the war, would become causes of the American Revolution. The small skirmish that had begun in the wilds of Ohio had changed the world forever.